I had done a video a little while ago on maintenance for your boat, doing the oil change and stuff for your engine, and a lot of people ask me questions about changing the spark plugs in the engine. So today that's what I'm going to go over. Spark plugs pretty easy to check. You do need some special tools that are going to help it make it easier, and I'll show you what you can use for that. Usually we check your spark plugs every 3 years. More than that if you're running the boat all the time. I don't run my engine all the time. I just use my engine to get to where an area I want to fish, and then after that I'm going to use my trolling motor. So I don't have my engine running all the time I'm on the water. Some of the larger boats will have an hour meter. It'll give you the run time, an engine run time for an hour meter. You can go by that, or you can go by time. Like I said, 3 years is probably a good time to check your plugs. When you do change your spark plugs, make sure you put the exact specification of spark plug back in the engine. There's lots and lots of different types of spark plugs. There'll be a number stamped on the plug. You can also find it in the owner's manual regarding which type of spark plug you want to use. That's going to vary from engine to engine, but make sure that's correct. You have different length plugs, you've got hot and cold running plugs, and all of them are going to affect your performance. The spark plug is also going to have a specified gap, which is the gap between the ground bar that comes off the bottom of the plug and then the tip of the electrode. You want to make sure that gap is set properly as well. But let's get to it. Okay, here's a side view of our engine. I'll give you a relation of where the spark plugs are. Here's your oil filter. Spark plugs are going to be here in the top of your cylinder head. These are ignition coils. And you can see the coils are numbered coil 1 and coil 2. And then your firing sequence is positioned on the coil also. This is cylinder 2, this is cylinder 3, this is cylinder 1, and cylinder 4. Just like a car engine, this will be the front of your engine. So the cylinders are going to be numbered from front to rear. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, and then 4 in the back. Sometimes with a 6-cylinder engine, it depends on the manufacturer. Sometimes they number them all one down one side, all the other down the other side. So it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Some of them then use sequential numbering, so it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You'd have to check your owner's manual to see what's relevant to your particular type of engine. Now the spark plug boot we're going to remove is right here. This is going to be cylinder number 1. I'm not going to take them all out because my boat doesn't need spark plugs, but there's your wire cap. You can see it's got a little bit of dielectric grease on there. You always want to use that to help, especially on a marine application, or even with your car. It's going to help prevent corrosion. A couple of things you want to watch for when you take your wires off, and check your wires too at your coils. Sometimes the coating, the rust-proof coating on the wire will deteriorate and you will get rust underneath the boots, and you'll get rust on the top of the wire. That's going to cause misfire, especially under load. You'd also want to watch for carbon tracking. When you take the spark plug out and you look at the body of the spark plug, if you see black lines that are burnt into the spark plug, at that point you want to change your spark plug and change your wire, because you'll also get a corresponding carbon track inside the wire. And that will cause misfire. What it's doing is it's running the current down the outside of the spark plug, along the wire and along the outside of the spark plug, and then grounding to the cylinder head. So you want to change the wire and the plug if that's the case. If your plug is just worn, you can get away with just the plug. Usually the wires will last a lot longer than the plugs. You could probably put 2 sets of plugs in it to 1 set of wires in it. As long as you maintain your wires and make sure that you don't have any cracking or splitting, and make sure that there's no corrosion underneath the boots. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and remove the spark plug. As you can see, I'm using a 5/8 spark plug socket. It's a special socket that's got a rubber tube in the inside to grip the spark plug, so it'll come out with the socket. I'll show you a couple different types of those. I'm also using a long extension 3/8 inch and then 3/8 inch ratchet. You can use a regular ratchet. You shouldn't be super tight. Pop it loose, twist it out. And that easy, it comes out. There's our spark plug. Looks nice and sharp. It's not real foul. There's a little bit of fouling on it, but not too bad. The electrode is nice and sharp. The tip is nice and sharp. That's pretty good. Now, if I were to see this, if I were to take it out and it was soaked with fuel, I may have other problems. Or if I smell a strong odor of fuel, I might have a bad wire, I might have a bad coil, I could have low compression. You know, there's a couple of things you got to look for with that. But these spark plugs are in pretty good condition. If I take it out, you can see these are made by Champion, and it's an RA8HC Champion spark plug. This little washer here is your compression washer. And I should always make sure those are on your spark plug when you go to put it back in. Sometimes they are off the spark plug when you get them in the packet. They're not on it. So this plug looks okay. Put it back in the socket. Always start spark plugs by hand. Don't go driving in with the ratchet till you're absolutely sure that it's threaded in right. If that's hand tight, back with my ratchet, it's hand tight, and I want an 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn. Now I already know that compression ring was already flattened, so it'll take a little bit more to get a newer one to crush, usually about a 1/4 turn. That's all you need. You do not need to over tighten your plugs. There are torque specifications on spark plugs. You're gonna have to look that up depending on the type of motor that you're running, because it varies from engine to engine. That's pretty simple. Of course, you would do that with all the plugs. On this engine, it would be a little easier if you unbolted the coils and then just, you know, lay them down. You don't have to unplug them, just unbolt them. It's got two 10mm bolts, and then lay it down, and that'll give you a little more access to your cylinder head. Always, when you put the wire back on, you want to make sure when you put it back on the plug, you hear that little click. That makes sure that the wire is on tight and it's gripping the top of your plug. Obviously, if you have your hood off, it's a good time to check all your connections, check your wire connections, the starter connectors and stuff here. Fuel filter, which is on the other side of the engine here, check and make sure that's okay, no leaks or anything like that. This engine is pretty clean. I keep it inside, so I'm not too worried about you know, corrosion or issues with rain or sun damage or anything like that. So that all looks pretty good. I'll give you a look at the tools you need to take the spark plugs out, and you know, for different applications, things that might, you know, help you out. Okay, I'm going to show you how to check the gap on your spark plug. For that, you need a gapping tool. This particular one is a snap-on one. On one side it's standard, on the other side it's metric. Usually in the US they give you standard dimensions for a spark plug gap. It can go anywhere, for small engine, go anywhere from 20 thousandths, for a car engine up to 45 thousandths. So you have to measure it. And how you would do that is that you're going to measure the gap between the ground bore and the tip of the electrode. So what you do is insert the tool into the gap like that, and then slide it up, and wherever it stops, that's where your reading is going to be. So you can see that reading is just under 25 thousandths of an inch. And like I said, I'm not going to quote what the gap is for this engine, because it's different for every engine, depending on what range spark plugs they run in it. So you're going to have to look that up, you know, and in regards to your specific engine. Because like I said, it will change from one to, you know, different engine to different engine. But that's how you would check that. You want to make sure that's correct, because if sometimes I run into this a lot, even at my work, where I'll get a packet of spark plugs in, and maybe they were dropped or they were handled rough, and the grounding bar will actually be touching the electrode, and you got to put the plug in and not realize it, and then you're going to get a misfire. And you're wondering, oh, well, I just put brand new plugs in it, why is it misfiring? So things like that you got to watch for. That's why I always check the gap before I put the plug in. Okay, I'm going to show you some tools that are going to make getting the spark plugs in and out of the engine a little easier. Sometimes, especially on the V engines, the access to the plugs is not real easy. Same goes for a car. You know, they can be pretty tight areas to get in and out of. What'll help you is if you find out what you're going to need for your particular application. As you can see, I have extension lengths of different sizes that, you know, enable me easy access to get in and out with the spark plugs. Also, this is a regular end extension. It's a regular square end, so when the socket goes on here, it stays straight and it stays tight, and there's a little lock, like a bead lock on it, so it won't come back off real easy. That enables you to manipulate the spark plug without dropping it, especially if you're getting to access it from the top. The spark plug will stay in this socket. Like I said, this is a 5/8 inch socket, which, as you can see, if I get it, there's a little rubber tube inside that holds the spark plug, so that when the plug is in there, it doesn't fall out, and that'll help you start it, and it also helps you start it straight so that it's not going to go cross-threaded on you. If you cross-thread a spark plug into your cylinder head, you are in for a very, very expensive repair. Cylinder heads are not cheap, and taking a cylinder head off to rethread it is not cheap. You can fix it. There are tools that you can get to chase spark plugs. You don't even want to go there. That's not even an option. Other tools that will make it easy. This is a swivel head. This is an impact swivel head. So if the spark plug is at a little bit of an angle, that gives you a little bit of application, that you can, a little bit of movement in there. This is going to pretty much stay where I set it. There are other types of, like I said, this is an impact extension. This would be a regular swivel. But as you can see, it's not as tight as the other one. So it gives you access, but it's still going to stay straight like the other one will. And a way around this, if you wrap some electrical tape around it, it'll hold its position a little better. But when they get loose and they're used a lot, they're going to flip-flop around. But even this one, of course, is cheaper than the impact one. But it still allows you to get all sorts of funny angles on the ratchet. Another option is to get a wobble head extension. You can see this extension. It's got a funny shape to the tip of it. If I compare it to the other one, that's straight cut. This is going to give you a little bit of motion on your spark plug socket. It's not completely fixed, but it gives you just enough, sometimes just enough, a little bit of movement on it, that it gets you in that little tighter area, get a little bit of clearance on it. I have another type of spark plug socket here. This is a snap-on socket. This one's a Craftsman one. I have access to all sorts of tool dealers because I'm a professional mechanic, so you don't have to have real high-end stuff to do this. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Harbor Freight, anywhere you can get spark plug sockets. You can go to Sears, Kmart, Walmart. Any of those places will have spark plug sockets. AutoZone, a lot of the auto stores, CarQuest, they'll all have them as well. This one is a snap-on one. This is magnetic. There's no rubber tube in it. It's a magnet, so what it does is when the plug slides in, it sticks to the magnet. A caution with this is if you put too much side tension on it, it will crack the porcelain on the plug, so you've got to be very careful with that. But this is pretty nice if you're in tight access areas. It's also a little bit longer for reaching down if you have recessed spark plug holes. This one will work pretty good. This is just like I said, the regular Craftsman socket. And this has the rubber, and it works just the same, and it's probably half the cost of that. But there's lots of different options for getting spark plugs in and out, and tools like this will make it much easier for you than trying to use a regular deep 5/8 inch socket. If you have to, you can get away with that. If that's all you have and you're stuck with that, to get the spark plug out, if you loosen it and then get a piece of fuel hose and just push the fuel hose on over the top of the spark plug, and then use the fuel hose to start your threading and pop it off, and then put the socket on and then thread it in, that'll work for you. The fuel hose will be able to hold the spark plug where you want it. That's a little trick to get around that. But I hope that video was helpful, gave you some hints and tips on being able to change the plugs in the engine. It's not that hard. Just be careful when you're threading those spark plugs back in. Be careful with it. Same goes for any type of engine, car, snow machine, ATV, snowblower. It doesn't make any difference what it is. Tighten your spark plug to your specified torque. Don't over tighten it. You don't want to strip those threads or damage your cylinder head or anything like that. Check them regularly, and certainly if you have a misfire problem, check those things first. They're pretty simple. Obviously, if it's not the spark plug, take it to somebody who knows what they're doing, and get yourself back on the water as quick as you can. I hope these tips were helpful, and thanks for watching.